United States of America,
to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Come on, even start with that. I have no option. So is there any, Rory, do we have any public comment? Did anybody call in with public comment, or did anybody show up for public comment?
I have received none.
Okay, great. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the Ordinance Committee meeting, special meeting, September 28th, 2020?
So moved by Finley.
First by Friendly. I need a second. Yep, thank you. Second by Rob. Okay. First on there is the Firefighters Abatement. Brian, can you tell us what you learned, what you found out?
Yes, let me get my notes up here. On the abatement, make sure my microphone's on. I contacted Doug Thomas regarding the administration of the program. And it was reported, as you'll recall, by Clay at the last meeting that there was an IRS memo and there was an issue with how the benefits would be taxed. As you know, with your ordinance, there should be an abatement, first to personal, then to real property, and that's what your ordinance calls for. When I spoke to Doug Thomas on September 29th, the way that the town has been doing it is issuing W-2s to the volunteer firefighters, treating them as employees. Instead of giving them just an abatement on their taxes and giving them a 1099 miscellaneous at the end of the year, Doug indicated that it was the firefighters' wish that they be treated as W-2 employees for purposes of this, so that the town would actually withhold money. As you know, if you got a $1,000 benefit, obviously that would could increase your taxable income by $1,000. So that would affect your taxes at the end of the year, the amount of a refund or what you may owe. If by treating these gentlemen as employees, it would seem to be more paperwork for the town, but there would be withholding from those checks. And instead of getting a tax abatement, they actually get a live check in their pocket to cash and utilize any way they want.
Do we know what the amount would have been for the net of that?
I guess it would depend on what you filed on your was it your W-9, the one that lists your withholding, whether you withhold single, married, like when you start a new job, whatever you claim, whether you want extra money withheld. But by doing it that way, I think that the employer has to pay a share of money as well. Instead of just giving a 1099, you're going to have to pay the employer's share of certain benefits as well. And if it's Social Security, I think, but I know it costs the town more to do it that way. And it would seem to be more complicated to do it that way too. But I'm told it was done because that's what the firefighters had asked for. They like the withholding. Don't know that that's right, but that's what the town is doing.
It's supposed to be an abatement. It's as simple
Yes,
as
sir.
it's supposed to be an abatement, right?
That's what we have on the books. Do we have any paper trail of when that request came from them to change to it being a W-2?
I don't. I thought Doug would be here to talk a little bit more about that.
Additionally, I spoke with Doug last week. In the packet for this week, it was pretty much all the same, but there was one additional document, which was some IRS guidance, which is what this is, this is based primarily on. I don't.
Yeah, basically, there's an IRS guidance that said volunteer firefighters receive local tax credits. That's taxable to them, taxable wages. So the question is whether, it's done as a 1099, and then let the individuals file it accordingly, or whether the town should be withholding from these gentlemen and ladies.
So here's my thought on it. If we're just giving them a check, it's really not an abatement. We're paying them for making drills. We're paying them for going on calls. It's almost like a paid fire department, almost, but not with the extremely heavy salaries that those, budgets that those comes with. It's not a true. I'm sorry, Rob, what?
And they can spend that money anywhere as opposed to it just coming off of the taxes.
An abatement is an abatement, you know, it's a tax abatement for a reason. I think, and this is just my opinion, that if they make that $1,000 quota, that abatement, can't we somehow, and Rory may be able to answer this, can't we somehow say, okay, you know how at the Board of Selectmen meetings, we get that list of abatements from each fire department and the ambulance, right? Once we say okay to that, why can't we turn that over to Dana Flack at the tax office and have her just credit the tax accounts?
My understanding
This way,
is how it was done previously.
okay,
And then the IRS issued this new guidance. And the way Doug interprets it, you know, it doesn't say that, you know, we may, you know, provide them a check. I mean, it essentially says, you know, if these benefits are offered in return for services performed, their value represents income to the worker for federal tax purposes and should be included in taxable wages. You know, it's not optional. It basically says it's a quid pro quo, so you have to be taxing it.
So we're going against the IRS if we do it the way we used to be doing it. And this
Yep.
is how we.
Well,
No.
I think we
Run the
used
risk
to
of
do
losing
it. We used to give them 1099s, according to Doug, because the
Right.
chairman is correct. Chairman DeGronis is correct. 6-36 of your ordinance defines abatement as a reduction in property taxes of the volunteer. It specifically defines abatement as we think it is. And it's my understanding in speaking with Mr. Thomas that the town previously gave 1099s to these individuals. So it was taxable. It was other income to them. But that the volunteers complained about it and said they wanted taxes withheld from their checks and didn't want just a tax reduction because when they went and filed their taxes, that would cause a tax liability. So I guess the question is, you know, if you, you know, you either put some, you know, you either get $1,000 off your taxes, and that's going to cost you, say, $280, depends on your bracket, or whether you get 1,000 less $280. I think it costs the town a little more to do it this way because the town probably has to do some withholding as some payment as well towards Social Security wages. But I think that's a Doug question regarding this. It's still taxable. It's not like we're trying to avoid the taxes. It's just how it's done.
If the intention was that they got $1,000 abatement, then the theory would be we would cover, and again, I'm just throwing this out there, we would cover the taxes so they receive their $1,000 abatement. Not that they would eat, that they would have to pay. So it would almost like we'd have to give them more than $1,000 so they would be clear on their $1,000 abatement.
Well, it says that they get an
or am I-
abatement. And the abatement is the reduction of property taxes, and the abatement amount is $1,000. So I don't know if you can make that leap that it has to be a net abatement of $1,000.
Okay, that's where I was going, because that's what their
Yeah.
complaint is, right? I mean, their complaint is that they're not getting the full $1,000.
Now, their complaint, I think, from my understanding from listening to this is, if I got a net check of say $750, say you take off 25%, just to use round numbers. I know, you know, that there was withholding from that money. If you reduce my taxes by $1,000, in my mind, I should say that I'm going to owe $250 in taxes, or I'm going to get $250 less as a refund, or I might have to file my taxes with a check. They still get the same net benefit, whether I got a check for $750 that I mail into Dana versus I got a reduction of $1,000, but I have to pay $250 to get that. It's still a net $750.
Oh, I agree with you, but is that what you understand? That's their clarity, because I think they think that they want the 1,000. I think it's the $1,000 number. I could be wrong.
Yeah, when I talked to Doug, he said that the benefit is taxable. It was somewhat of a pain to credit the accounts and issue 1099s. I pointed out the ordinance requires a credit. He said he knew that, but the volunteers complained they wanted taxes withheld from their checks and didn't want a tax reduction because that would make a tax liability when they went to file their taxes. And they like the town withholding, and that's why the town has done it.
But that's not an abatement.
That's what he told me on the 29th. So I thought, yeah, I'm just reporting.
And no, I know, but to me, that's not an abatement. That means you're getting paid to be on a volunteer fire department. Yes, Rob?
So I was just kind of going in my head like, wait, where the hell did this thing start in the first place? I feel like it's found in a few different places. This could kind of get boiled down to the benefit that we, the town, are offering. It doesn't, we don't have to do it. It doesn't have to be done. We want to show our appreciation. So kind of like this is how we're going to do it. No matter what, it's a benefit. It's extra to you one way or the other. I'm struggling to remember where we want to go with this and who's asking for it in the first place. They're asking us to review it, to go back to it, because Brian?
Well,
No, there was how this came up under 1281. There was a change in the state law that says a municipality may by ordinance establish a program to provide tax relief for non-salaried firefighters and any individual who's a retired firefighter, police officer, or EMT and has completed 25 years of service is also eligible for the abatement for up to $1,000. Or an exemption to the assessed value of the property. So I think that it came up as if you have a lady or gentleman who had done their 25 years, we could change the local ordinance now and give them that exemption on the abatement on a go-forward basis.
And then opens up the can of worms about abatement versus check.
Well, when we started speaking of that, the fire chief brought that up, but he then indicated that perhaps there would be some requirement. He would not suggest that everyone get with 25 years get this, that there would be some type of a continued service requirement that he would get back to us with, whether it's going to the headquarters to do cleanup, maybe not going to active fires and emergency calls. He was going to get back with some recommendation when he talked to the chiefs of the other departments about that. I guess another question since then is, I don't know, are we paying, if you have a firefighter that doesn't pay taxes in this town, because he doesn't own real estate or he doesn't have a car, he has a company car only, for instance, I don't know whether we're giving them $1,000 check or whether, I don't know what we're doing with those.
So I pretty sure I know the answer to that one. So if they have a car and they meet the $1,000 capacity for taxes, the abatement, then say their car taxes are $336. Then they only get $336 to put towards their car. But as of right now, if they make $1,000, if they make that point and they get 1,000, then they're getting a $750 check. It's not going towards their abatement. So they're kind of doubling their car taxes. You know what I mean?
Yep. I mean, it may be best to get, I think you're going to need Clay because the ball was in his court to come back with a proposal in any event. If you're going to extend this to those with 25 years of service under the new state statute, he was going to try to come up with a proposal on behalf of the fire department, and also Doug we would need as well, I think.
The 25 years of service where they were going to put in that, because some of the guys, can't really make the drill. They can't wear an air pack, so they cannot be an active firefighter, but they may still be able to drive a truck, or they may be able to be fire police, but they also had to do some sort of community service, whether it was Great Hill Hoses, Easter egg hunt, or it was the flower sale, or C2's pancake breakfast, or their steak. They had to do something to give back to the community, and it had to be documented. Parades were out of it. The parades were not counted, but it had to be like serving the community in some way or fashion. I think it's a great idea to extend it to our, to the people getting ready for retirement. Absolutely. But if it's an abatement, it's an abatement. I don't feel comfortable, and I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I do not feel comfortable continually giving out, taking $1,000 and taking the taxes out and giving someone a $750 check, because it could be interpreted that they work for the town. Yes.
Yeah, we got to figure out how it becomes an abatement again. It just feels
Yeah, but-
like it.
And to Rob's point, we came up with this and we can tell them this is how it is. If you like it, okay, but we're not going to give the checks out. It's costing the town more money in reality. I mean, it's $1,000, but to your point, if someone is living and is renting and they have a car or whatever, and they're only paying $300 in taxes, then they're getting more money than what they would have had if we were just putting it towards their tax abatement.
Yeah, I'm completely in favor of expanding to 25 years of service, that whole part of it. As far as now seeing exactly where this is what it was, like I said earlier, and like you just refreshed, this is a program we're trying to run to be nice, to give a little incentive. That's what it is. It's an abatement on your taxes. I'd like to see the data on how many people that would, taking that $1,000 as some income would somehow bump them out of a bracket and knock them into some bad tax situation.
I just remind you that the tax law doesn't work that way. If you have $1 that puts you into a higher bracket, only that additional dollar is taxed at the higher bracket. We have a progressive tax system, not a regressive tax system.
Yeah,
that's a great
$1 million.
point.
I'm not taxed on every dollar of that million, just what's over it.
Over whatever.
All the
I
more,
wouldn't know
all the
from
more reason.
experience. I don't make $1 million, but if any of you do, you could probably.
Not me.
Not yet.
Okay. That's a
I
good
haven't
attitude.
lotto yet.
But you're right. But that extra dollars may put you into a bracket, but only for that additional dollar over your existing bracket.
Yeah, then
I spoke with firemen from different towns and different states, well, actually recently, that I know, that are friends, and this is a very good thing. All of them don't have this type of program in their fire districts. So we're us little town of Seymour offering this to them. They're pretty fortunate.
Yeah, and I hate to see it be abused.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's why I want to get it right. I mean, if we're going to do this, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think bring it back to an abatement of $2,000 based on the point system. Go back to the what did we do before we did a 1099 miscellaneous?
Yeah.
It's going to go back to that, and it's going to say this is something we're offering. Just maybe send it with a little note that says, don't forget you may have to withhold on it, but this is what it is, because otherwise we're trying to be nice. We're saying that we're going to take in less money as a city because we recognize your value. But on top of that, we're also taking more paperwork, more resources, more hours. So it's costing the city more to do this.
Correct. Agreed.
I just hope I don't have a fire anytime soon after this happens.
No, you say that it's a very positive thing. I mean, we're just trying to make it right of what it was intended to be. It seems like it got out of what it initially intended to be because of either interpretation or misinterpretation of the tax law. I mean, I gotta believe that there's tax laws that tell you how to manage this, abatements. I gotta believe that there's direction on it. Brian, wouldn't that make sense? Or
I think it's clear that it's taxable. I think that's, that is the direction. It's my understanding. Doug would be the better person, or maybe one of the town auditors, but it clearly has to be taxable to the firefighters because they are getting a benefit.
If I understand it wasn't being done improperly before. It was part of it was their request.
That's what I got from speaking with Doug, that let me get my notes out again here, that the benefit is taxable, and he said it was a little bit difficult to credit the accounts and issue 1099s. Why, I don't know. I pointed out that the ordinance requires a tax credit, a tax abatement, and he stated he knew that, but the volunteers complained they wanted taxes withheld from their checks, and they did not want to get a tax reduction, which could result in a tax liability when they filed their taxes. They liked the withholding better. That's why the town was doing it.
Well, the alternative could have been for us to just say, okay, we're not going to do the program anymore.
Well, I'll take a check over an abatement all day. Cash in hand.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know.
Yeah, clearly.
Especially if your wife doesn't see it.
Right, damn money.
Make mine out to cash.
Yes.
Mr. Cash, yes.
And that's the thing, I mean, because this really, it's the intention of an abatement versus cash in hand.
Mhm.
So.
Right.
they do
And it's
something
a thank you. It's a thank you to them. So,
And I would be hard pressed that, you know, like you were, where you were headed, Robert, Rob, I think I'd be hard pressed to think that anybody went into a different task bracket because of it, or were, you know, were hurt because of it, so.
I don't know, but we could actually have, I guess we could have that looked into to see if it did. But I
I'm
don't know if
positive.
that's getting
I'm
into somebody-
positive. I'm positive of that under tax law in the United States. Yeah.
I mean,
It never hurts to make more money. You're never worse off. You can never make an additional dollar and end up paying more taxes than if you didn't get that dollar.
right. Because you're only being taxed on that extra dollar,
Correct.
not million, like when we hit jackpot.
Okay, so where does this leave us and where are we going with this?
I think you have a deliverable that you're owed from Clay. They were going to come back with some, because the state statute says you can give it to anyone with 25 years of service in the department. They wanted to put more restrictions on it, according to him. Make there be, as the chairman said, some type of a service
Participation.
requirement for the department, participation requirement. And they were going to try to get back with us for that tonight. They're not here, so obviously they don't have that proposal for us. And plus, I think you're going to want to talk to Mr. Thomas as well.
I believe the other clarification we as a board had wanted was that it had to clearly state that they were a Seymour firefighter for 25 years. No additional time in any town could be used to come out to that 25 years. So they couldn't do 10 years in Seymour in 15 years in Oxford. Or it had to be clearly a Seymour Fire Department, be it Citizens or be it Great Hill. And it had to be used for properties owned in the town of Seymour. That's when we found out about them receiving checks. They said, well, what difference does it make where it's used or how it's spent is because we get checks. I'm like, that's not what that's for. And that's why that's how we found out that they weren't truly getting abatements, they were getting paid. So that's how the Pandora's box was opened.
Okay, so we're going to wait on clarification from Clay, new language that makes what Anne Marie just said. And other than that, we'll forward on the Board of Selectmen that we want to switch it back to an abatement.
Well, it is an abatement. We don't have to really change the ordinance. It clearly says abatement, and the enabling statute by the state talks about getting an abatement of up to $1,000.
So
That's
then
how it's being administered locally.
we just want to talk about getting it switched back to properly being administered.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does that cover 5 and 6, Anne Marie?
That covers 5. 6, we're gonna have to table because Clay is not here. So yes, it does. And then we go into the nonprofit assessment, item number 7.
And Madam Chairman, on that, I have spoken to your tax assessor, Mr. Kuziak, and I submitted, I sent to everyone this morning a draft property tax abatement ordinance entitled
Yes.
Section X-X once we put the number in. and that would deal with the what is now allowed under state statute, and that is the giving to tax-exempt nonprofit organizations an abatement of taxes, personal or real taxes on leased property.
Okay. Is there any, did everybody get a chance to read that ordinance? Well, except for you, Paul, you didn't get a chance to read that. Rob, you're muted.
I said, Paul, speed read it right now.
Finley, did you get a chance to read that?
I'm reading it right now.
Okay. I'll give everybody a chance to read it.
I believe I'm good with it.
Okay. Rob? You're good with it as well? Okay. So can I have a motion from the floor to move this forward to the Board of Selectmen for the October 20th meeting?
So move.
Second by Rob.
Second, yeah. It's just when I had my cursor on one window, even though I hit the space bar, it doesn't automatically let me talk. So I have to click back on the Zoom box. That's why I keep
Okay.
looking like an idiot.
All right.
Never, Rob.
Never. Okay, so we have a motion to move that forward. All in favor?
I
Okay, great. Rory, we're going to move the nonprofit assessment to the Board of Selectmen
Okay.
meeting on October 20th.
And the other thing I should say, because we canceled the selectmen meeting on Tuesday, we have to republish the notice for the two ordinances that you'd already moved forward. We had a public hearing scheduled. So I'll get that in the paper next week.
Okay,
Thank you, Rory.
thank you, Rory. Okay, next on the agenda is number 8, Noise Ordinance.
And Madam Chairman, it's Brian Leclerc. Just to remind the body, at the last meeting, you had asked that we contact the police chief in order to obtain information regarding the specific complaints the department has received over the last year, the frequency of complaints by address, and the seasonality of the complaints. I circulated 2 documents this morning received from the police department, and the chief is on the line. One are residential noise complaints. The other are commercial noise complaints. And the chief can explain what they have, but he has it by address. The blocks 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th, 9th, 10th, etc. That just shows how many calls came in over the year. They're then analyzed whether they're loud neighbors, loud music, fireworks, dog barks, whatever. And then whether it's winter or summer. And he did that for both commercial and residential addresses. So the chief is here, I know, Madam Chairman, to address this.
I'm shocked at the amount of gunshots.
Yeah.
All over the town. I did not expect that one.
I bet you a lot of them are coming from the mountains, the Great Hillside. Because we have a lot of coyotes over here. Just joking.
They didn't get tamales too much. They got Pub 67 pretty good a few times. And PNS paving.
Balance Rock is pretty active.
Yeah.
I think PNS, the chief, those are calls by neighbors when the trucks drive by. Is that correct? I think that's what you had said.
But when are they starting? I mean,
They have some big equipment. The PNS trucks are big.
yeah,
big
they are
stuff.
big.
with the police chief on.
Yep.
Maybe we should ask him about the concept of time versus decibel and what his thoughts are on that.
Mhm. That's a great idea.
Paul, can you talk to us a little bit about, we've been talking a little bit about decibel level versus, just hours that, kind of working with hours and what would be an amenable ordinance. Maybe some of your thoughts.
Good evening, everyone. So we put together those spreadsheets. Hopefully that gives you a better understanding of the type of calls, where they occur, and the frequency of those calls. I think it's over a period of like 18 months. So I think those are some of the documents you just reviewed. I'd like to thank my records clerk, obviously Caroline Spalding, for putting that together and researching a lot of that and putting those spreadsheets together. But as far as the decibel levels go, I think what the town has here is sufficient. I mean, usually when we get these type of calls, obviously there's different thresholds for different people, and there's many variables. Noise complaints are a lot of subjective, depends on the individual. Sometimes, we even get complaints during the day if someone works a midnight shift and then, someone's out mowing their lawn or blowing their leaves. So, there's a lot of variables, what people, bother them or complaints, dog barkings. You see a lot of those. You mentioned gunshots. I mean, some of those are misinterpreted for fireworks and vice versa. So that's a combination of things that happen there. We do have a noise meter. I think it's only been used a handful of times, probably over the last 10 years or so. Usually we try to get compliance at the lowest level, and probably 99.9% of the time that occurs, and people take those things into consideration when an officer shows up their house. They explain the situation, a noise complaint, and then usually the situation goes away. You do get repeat offenders, obviously. You see at like the Pub 67 and some other businesses where they have bands or live music, and they open the doors, and that plays a factor. And that noise carries. I mean, years ago we had down on the river, Roosevelt Drive, where they had the old Stone's Throw restaurant, and we were getting constant complaints from the people across the river in Shelton because the noise would just bounce off the mountains and sit right in there. So I think what's in here is appropriate. I'm not really sure what your committee was looking at, and but I a lot of times even these levels and even higher levels, it's it's very, you'd be surprised as to what little noise these levels are, and then you would still have probably noise complaints. So I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure exactly what the committee's looking at just getting into this meeting. I guess you had prior meetings, so I'm not sure what feedback you got from before this meeting. So
No feedback, just trying to map out how to make sure everybody gets along and a little noise and nuisance to each other as possible. As far as, we think we all know and are in agreement that we're not reaching any dangerous levels of sound. This is always just an annoyance thing, a public nuisance. Really quick, the PNS paving, we kind of breezed over that. That's pretty, are those, that amount of complaints pretty regular year over year?
those complaints, I think that's been an ongoing issue that has to do with kind of with planning and zoning has been handling a lot of that. You have, I believe that's an industrial zone with the residential houses in that zone. So obviously that's kind of where the conflict is.
Yeah.
And I guess disagreement were the people that live there. So, we, meaning the police, law enforcement, have been working very closely with planning and zoning, and obviously the building inspector and the blight officer. A lot of those complaints are from the trucks. It's actually from the business itself, where they believe, they shouldn't be working there or grinding, but, they have all the proper permits, and the town did its due diligence to make sure that the business was in compliance. And, it's really a situation where you have an industrial zone and residential houses in that zone. So
Anywhere. that
I'm not sure you're ever
happens.
going to be able to correct that. And like I said, there's different thresholds for different people. And I think predominantly that's one or two neighbors there that complain about that. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but because we don't live there, right? So,
Yeah.
but those are some of the complaints, or most of the complaints from there. So.
My parents live next to Oxford Airport. So, I mean, if they were to call in a complaint every time a plane took off, they're not going to stop the airport from working. It's doing its thing, and it's in its proper place. Yeah, it's I deal with blasting and blasting related noise complaints, and it takes very, very little for people to perceive it and be affected by it on some level, even if it's just a nuisance. So it's just trying to see if anything could be done ordinance wise, keep it in a place where there's going to be less nuisance and annoyances without disrupting businesses. Especially nowadays, clearly talking about the pub 67s and the hot tamales, the last thing we want to do is anything that would make them have to take in less business. We want our businesses to thrive. We want to help them out as much as we can without hurting the residents nearby as well.
Well, Rob, just to add, I thought it was going to be worse for those businesses, and compared to all the other stuff, they're a little blip on the map compared to everything.
Oh yeah, believe me, I love Pub 67. I gotta usually wait on the phone for 15 minutes to place an order. So good for them, Sarah and all.
Chief, Chief, do you need any other arrows or tools in your quiver for noise issues other than the state statutes and the ordinance that we have already in Seymour? Is there anything this committee can help you with or draft up?
Like I said, I reviewed this again, prior to this meeting, and besides like we just described, if you look at those complaints, I mean, those are everyday, neighbors, residences. And I don't think we're going to be able to solve a lot of those. You get the people that live in apartment buildings and they got thin walls or creaky floors in some of these older buildings or houses. We get those calls too, where, oh, my neighbor's walking around 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, the neighbor just got home from work after working 8-12 hours, and they're winding down. And so, I mean, we try to handle those as, like I said, on the lowest level possible. And but I think what's here is sufficient. But again. Hopefully, as you look at this data that was presented to you and maybe review it, and if we could be any further assistance, we'll review it together. But
Paul, tell whoever put this together, thank you very much. This is great. This is actually
Absolutely.
Yeah,
tells a story.
please,
Fantastic.
please tell Caroline we said thank you. And thank you as well for taking the time out of your schedule tonight to meet with us. We know you're bogged down with meetings as well. And we all need to work together to get through this. And forgive me if I didn't hear the question, or if the question was posed and I zoned out for a minute. Rob and I and Bob, we work with audible metrics through our jobs, right? So we know how to read an audible reading. I know you said you had machines that can do readings. Are the police officers trained on how to use those? If they were called to a scene and the neighbor was very insistent on a reading being done, is there something that the police officers can do to do a reading to either say yay or nay? They're at, or they're below, or they're above?
so we do have a noise meter. Like I said, it's only been used a handful of times, but we're going to have to get some additional training on some officers. Like I said, I don't know when the last time it's been used. We do get it calibrated.
Okay.
And, the people that do our radar units calibrate our noise meter also. But, as we get new officers, and over the last probably year or so, we had probably 8 to 10 new officers. So, we have to get additional training on that. And I will look into that further, but we have the machine, but how many people, a lot of the people that were trained on it obviously have retired or left the department for other reasons, whatever. But, that's one area we'll have to look at to increase that, if you will.
And Paul, I gotta assume that you would use the machine only or it would be used in instances where you had a sustained noise issue and you had to prove that it was occurring outside the time that's allotted for, because at certain times things need to get quieter. So I'm assuming that you would leave it, and again, I don't know that. Do you leave it somewhere and let it run and log noise? Because you could never catch some of those ones that are just instantaneous and just to show up and it's not there anymore. That would be more for sustained levels. Is that true or false?
No, I think you're correct there. Again, if you go back down to Roosevelt Drive where the old Stone's Throw was, I mean, those were regular complaints. And then obviously we sent some personnel down there and they tried to ascertain the noise levels. So the way that works is you have to be so far, I think it's like 100 yards off the property, and then you set the machine up and then you take your readings. And I think you got to do like 2 tests, and there's different formats, obviously, how to use it when you're trained in it. But like I said, usually, we go there, we evaluate if there's loud music, or we ask them to turn it down. We talk to the neighbor. Sometimes they don't even realize it. Sometimes you have elderly people that might obviously have to have it turned up for different reasons, and and then when you tell them, oh, it's loud, it's disturbing the neighbors, then obviously they comply. So we always try to use the lowest compliance before,
Right.
go to the extreme, if you will. So
Okay.
like I said, that's only been used a handful of times, and it hasn't been used in quite some time, even though we have the machine and we do get it calibrated.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Do you, Anne Marie?
No, I'm just thinking about this ordinance and how we're gonna move it forward from to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for a failure or setting a higher expectation than we think we can do. Or putting too much on, our police force either.
Well, we could leave it alone, table what we have right now, leave it alone, and just monitor it as an ordinance committee.
We could do that.
We don't have to make any changes to it at this point. If, and then, having Paul tell me that he thinks it meets the requirements, that helps me to understand, to believe that it probably does.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I thought that was kind of one of the concerns, was if it needed to be stronger to help alleviate pressures on them. But if it is what it is, and we just have to deal with the fact that there's always going to be complaints, even when noise is not exceeding any levels, just something we may always have to deal with.
Right. I mean, we know when Hayes is blasting because the Seymour Mom page just blows up.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll say this, maybe it's also, because that's the other part, when people start to complain, I think we do need to point them to where the ordinances are. This is beyond the guys of this meeting here, but that could be some of the gap as well, where people don't understand what we already have in play and where the ordinances reside.
Yeah,
So,
and then it is monitored. It is, when it needs to be, it's monitored, and make sure they stay within.
listen, this report Paul just laid out, I mean, that just impressed me,
It's
that
an
we
awesome report.
yeah, that we have that much activity, and this is how we manage it, and this is how we know what goes on, and we can trace where there's more, where there's maybe a heavier load, or where we have a specific problem. It starts to pattern stuff out for you. So I think, the use of that tool, that reporting, along with the ordinance that we already have, might just be enough for now.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
And I'm always available, or, so if you need anything else, let us know. And, we'll continue to assist you any way we can. But, to go back, I mean, we even get complaints when it's snowing out, right? And, people, they got to clear their businesses. They live close or next to a business, and they're snow plowing at 2 or 3 in the morning. I mean, I understand that, sometimes that wakes people up. But at the same time, it's a necessity. The business has to be clear before, 6 o'clock in the morning or when the business opens and the employees start coming in. So, I mean, those are just things we deal with. And once we explain some of this, obviously, to the people, they have a better understanding. And so, like you said, sometimes it's education, just informing the people and letting them know that, that's what's on the books, that's allowable, and then they get a better understanding. When they were working on Route 8 for the longest time, we had complaints all downtown. Those people that live downtown, when they're working on Route 8 right above. I mean, we used to get complaints there too a couple of years back, but there's only certain things you can control, and obviously the work has to get done. So those are just some of the things that, like Rob said, we're never going to be able to please everybody, but we try to mitigate them as much as we can. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. Okay, great. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome, and have a good night. Stay
You
safe.
too.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move to item number 9 is discussion and take possible actions on other ordinance forwarded by the Board of Selectmen, or we don't have any other ordinance forwarded to us, correct?
We do not.
Not yet, right?
Hmm.
Okay. So on number 5, the firefighters abatement, just to button up where we are, the firefighters abatement, we have that tabled because we're still waiting for information from, we have to talk to Doug Thomas, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Attorney Leclerc, Brian, are you going to take that?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I will reach out to him again and have him for your next committee, next ordinance committee meeting.
I think we really need to hear, I don't know how the rest of the members feel, but I feel that we need to hear from Doug himself as to what happened and why it happened and how it happened. And a part of me is saying, I really like to have a commissioner here, not a chief, the commissioners, because the chiefs report to the commissioners. And have a commissioner here to explain why they changed it or why they felt it should have been changed.
I think that's unreasonable.
Yeah.
Would you like me to reach out to them, Madam Chairman, to get a commissioner at your next meeting as well?
Yes, please. As far as, Rory, they really need to button up their language on their 65 plus abatement. I know that Clay and the rest of the fire commissioners do not like to meet because they do not like to have Zoom, but they need to understand that they have to meet for us to move things forward.
Yeah, I can check in with them and, reiterate that to them.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're in a pandemic and we really all just thought maybe we'd be meeting Zoom for 6 months. But the way it looks like we'll probably be doing Zoom meetings probably going into next year. And we can't wait for the fire commissioners to, not want to hold a meeting because they want to speak in person. All these boards have to start, in my opinion, moving forward here. I don't know what the rest of the ordinance feels on that.
Absolutely, things can't stop.
We have a town, we have to keep moving forward here.
Yeah.
So I would really like the commissioners to have buttoned up by our first meeting in November. I would like to have some sort of idea where we as a committee are heading with this abatement, whether we're going to continue it or we're not going to continue it. So I think by giving the fire commissioners, as well as Doug Thomas and Dana Flack, if need be, until When's our first meeting in November? Or do we want to? Our first meeting is going to be Wednesday, the 4th, right, Rory?
Well, election day is the 3rd, right?
Yeah, so we always move our meeting to that Wednesday.
Yeah.
Correct.
That gives them 2 weeks to figure it out. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's reasonable.
Yep, I think so.
Okay. I mean, some of us have to, turn stuff out in 24 hours. So I right?
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So I think maybe we meet Monday, November 2nd. Does anybody have an issue with that? I can't meet on election night. I'm sorry.
Second.
Second's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. I gotta, no, yeah, second's fine.
Are you sure? Because we could do like 7, or is that okay, Rob? 7?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. So Rory, our next meeting is going to be Monday, November 2nd, 2020 at 7 o'clock. There's no holidays there to throw us off. And at that meeting, we want to make sure we have Doug Thomas and the fire commissioner, one of the fire commissioners there. And Brian is going to follow up with that as well.
Yes.
Right.
Will do.
Does everybody agree?
Mhm.
Okay. And then we're going to move the nonprofit assessment to our meeting on October, to the rest of the board on October 20th, correct? Because we're all good with the nonprofit assessment.
Correct.
Okay. The noise ordinance. What do we want to leave it as is?
That's it. Like Bob said, we're tabling that because
We're tabling it.
do it. And the biggest issue with that would have been seeing how it interacts with the police, and the police are saying it's fine.
So if the police are saying it's fine, right?
Mhm.
Then the ordinance itself is fine. So then why don't we move it forward?
We already have the ordinance on
Already
the book.
Forward would be to change it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
I mean, we could just forward, just say we've reviewed it and it's as of this date, we think it's sufficient. So we're not changing anything in it.
Right.
Yes, that's what I mean. Forward it to the Board of Selectmen. It's good to go.
We're not doing
Right.
anything to it.
And I want to make sure we're clear that, we've had the chief of police
Yeah.
have said that this is good.
Yeah, that would be part of your statement in there,
Yeah.
Per
We're gonna- we're
And
gonna-
again, we meet
If it
monthly,
happens
so
in
if it
a
needs to come
year.
back into play, then we can bring it back up. We can re-raise it at a later date.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, that's what I mean by forward. Rory, do you know, so that this board can prepare itself, are there any other ordinances? Spam people. Are there any more ordinances that we need to look at that are issues? Because we're on a roll. And I want to keep the train going. If we're good, we're good.
Should we
If we're
review
not-
all of them?
I was gonna say, we might want to revisit them all.
Yeah,
Well, as I recall, the charter revision, the charter is maybe 50 pages long. The code of ordinances is about, 8 times the size.
this face.
This planning committee reviewed whether the selectmen could or should review the entire code, and we decided it probably wasn't feasible. I'm sure there's a lot that needs updating. I'm sure if we looked, we could.
We just
find
started ordinances like the first one and literally just,
I was just gonna say that, yeah.
yeah, if nothing else is going on, each meeting we will come prepared to discuss the next one.
That's exactly how charter revision did it, that some of you may remember last time. We just had
Yes.
homework, if you will, just go through, for every
Yeah.
meeting, one section or a few sections.
Mhm.
That's a good
And
way to
Rory,
do it.
I know the ordinance is a pretty big thing, and we can get that right on the website. So we can sit there and say, okay, well, we know what we have coming forward to us on November, I forgot the date already, November 2nd.
Second,
But then us individually can look at the ordinance and say, okay, let's take the first, from until December, let's take the top 3 and look at those and see what needs to be changed and go from there. What do you guys, I want to have goals, but I want them to be achievable and realistic.
Yeah, before I say which ones we'd look at, I would look at the size of them. Because the
Yeah.
first one might be like something huge, and the next 5 are nothing, like one-liners. So let's, between now and the next meeting, look and start kind of breaking it down into workable chunks.
Okay. As long as we have a plan in place that we're
Yeah,
going to
we're
work
not going to disband just because we're not being asked to do a specific one.
No, because we always got to be moving. All of us are in a regulated field, right? Regulations are constantly changing. So we need to keep our ordinance up with the times.
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about the times, the band either. From the
hey,
movie.
Rory, it's
Purple Rain.
Brian. I just called up the ordinances, just so you know, they're not online anymore. Something happened. It looks like that section of the website crashed. They were there Friday. Now they can't find the content when you click on ordinances.
Well, that's not good.
Charter
Well,
comes up. Okay, the charter comes up and special acts, but when you click on ordinances from the usual spot, town documents, code of ethics comes up, ordinances. I tried a bunch of times. Now it says code of ordinances, can't find, content not found.
Yeah, that may just be a dead link. I'll
Just
take
to
a look.
warn you, yeah. That's weird. 'Cause it was working it's always worked. We look at this all the time.
It's funny because I think Brian, if you click on it again, I
Mhm.
think it allows you to go into it. Maybe I'm wrong.
It doesn't usually look like this. It's a different, I know you can start again, and if you go March of 2009, this is not how it usually looks. So I don't know what it's actually putting up here right now, but it's not how it always looks.
Okay.
But I was just going to direct you to that because you could see that, for instance, there's, chapter 1 general, then you go down to administration, adult oriented business, alcoholic beverages, building, civil services, by different chapters. You have 17 different chapters, I think. Very strange.
In the chat here in Zoom, I just sent a link that should bring you to the online hosted version.
Oh yeah, there they are.
Yeah, that's where I was. Yep. Yeah.
COVID cases double at Trinity.
My point was I was going to tell you there's a very nice search function here for you folks
Okay.
who, if you want to search anything in the ordinances, it's pretty robust.
I don't think we really need to look at section 0.1. That's the general provisions. I know one of the things I would really like to look at is in chapter 2, the administrative, article 2, boards, commissions, committees, and agencies. I would really like to look at that, especially now, since, the time of electronics.
Welfare Advisory Board.
Brian,
Yes, ma'am.
Section 236 organization. At the first meeting in April, the committee as on the aging shall select a chair or vice. So, Rory, is there a way that we can find out what committees are actually active and what committees are not active? I mean, I like to believe that they're all active, right? Commission of Aging, Board of Ethics. Did
That's a
someone
great
just laugh
section
at
you
me?
picked, and that's a great section you picked. Look at the grammatical and substantive error in it.
Yes.
So shall serve until 31st of the ensuing year. Whatever that means.
I don't know that. What, Rory?
You know, in terms of inactive boards, committees, commissions, that would be, for example, like school construction committees after they're completed are retired. If a committee is formed to execute a grant, those become inactive. The Board of Selectmen dissolves them. If you'll recall, the Board of Selectmen dissolved like the Friends of the Broad Street Park Committee. It was
Yeah, that was resolved, right?
right. And then also like the Charter Revision Commission is currently inactive, but can be activated by, you know, the
Anytime. Civil Preparedness Agency. I think we did go through that and we took out, I think we did go through that one.
we made some changes,
Yeah.
preparedness, changing into emergency management.
Right.
Yeah, I remember that. Is there a way, like, say, I know our town residents can look through this. Is there a way, like the Friends of Broad Street Park Commission, I just pulled that up, and I know that we disband them. Is there a way we can just put a hyperlink saying that it's disband?
Well,
Or do we
I'm-
want to do that? You know, because what if someone, I mean, you know, rest his soul, Al Yagavane passed away, right? Maybe somebody wanted to.
I mean, so, you know, on a long enough time frame, the issue you run into is you'll just have like a very long list and it'll get confusing, you know. So for example, the Chatfield School Committee was probably formed when Chatfield was built.
Yeah, I remember that.
Chatfield Lopresti, so the name changed in 2012 or whenever that was done. If the same school is renovated again, it will be the Chatfield Lopresti School Committee, and you're just going to be building up a long list. So, for example, the inactive boards, you know, the town clerks maintain all of the minutes, but we don't post them on the website because otherwise
Okay.
you'd have a list of like 50 committees, you know?
Right.
and I know there's a footnote on Broad Street Park. For instance, if you look at that, the editor put a note saying there was an ordinance of March 4th, 2014 that did not specifically amend the code, hence it's included, but it was included at the discretion of the editor, meaning the company that put the code up. So they weren't sure what to do. I guess we can always go back and look at that ordinance, and you could see if you disbanded it by ordinance, then you could just take it right out of the online publication. I think they're trying to say they didn't know what to do.
Oh, okay.
That should be removed. I mean,
Same with Strategic Planning Commission. They also have the same footnote talking about a March ordinance. I don't know what we have to, you can look at that as well.
well, strat plan's still running. So
Yes,
It
I don't know
is.
what that ordinance was in March, why they're putting that in there, what they're trying to say.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
I'm sorry, Brian, what is the note?
I'm sorry, Roy. There's a note on Friends of Broad Street Park. It said, editor's note. An ordinance adopted March 4th, 2014 did not specifically amend the code. Hence, inclusion as Chapter 2, Article 2, Division 14, Section 2-160.131-134 was at the discretion of the editor. And then there's a note under strategic planning, editor's note. Again, it's talking about a March 4th, 2014 ordinance, and it was included at the discretion of the editor again. I don't know what that refers to. We'd have to drill down a little bit to see.
Mhm.
And there's an ordinance in 2016 that affected the strategic planning as well.
I remember the strategic planning one, they kind of, they made a couple of edits. So like, for example, it was the first selectman shall meet, quarterly, and then we decided that was too frequent. So we moved it to semi-annually. They changed the membership from 7 to 5. There's been a couple of changes in that one. So maybe the notes are referring to that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Rory, who is our demolition officer?
Jim Baldwin.
Okay.
There's a lot, a lot of it are kind of like, I assume the state requires a demolition officer or something by statute. And then some of it will be, like the Board of Selectmen may have dissolved a committee without realizing that there was an ordinance that, established that committee. So there are some things that may be vestigial, that we just haven't cleaned up.
Right. Okay. Well, it looks like the Ordinance Committee has their hands full. I would think. Not their hands full, but we won't be bored anytime soon.
That was totally what I was worried about.
I know, right? Me too. Being bored.
You want to give us a homework assignment for the next meeting? Any particular you want us to start reading chapter 2?
Oh, look at that. Utilities. No. That's sewer. I think we're already, my head's spinning on the last WPCA meeting. We did good on that one.
Oh, what's our standing? What's happening with that as far as existence of boards and changing from stat to get in line with the statutes? What's the status of that whole thing?
Rory, did we say I think Rory has refreshed my memory. Go ahead.
Yes, because the Board of Selectmen meeting was for Tuesday was canceled.
Mm-hmm.
The public hearing that would have moved that ordinance to
Gotcha.
was canceled, so we have to reschedule it.
Okay, that's we're waiting on the town meeting. Gotcha.
So once the town meeting, no one's going to vote on that, right? Well, no one will show up for the town meeting.
Correct. Wait for the Board of
Maybe
Selectmen.
now that they don't have to physically come, now that everybody could zoom in, you're going to get 16,000 participants.
Right.
For the record, I ran the meeting just in case anybody showed up in spite of the cancellation, and nobody showed up.
Okay.
I'm not sure anybody was so eager to comment on that one.
All right. So let's, so then that will go out and then we'll come back on that one. All right. So that's where we are with that. Let's look at Article 2, boards, commissions, committees, and agencies for our next meeting. So we have the Committee on Aging, the Board of Ethics, Municipal Flood and Erosion Control Board, Safety Commission, Welfare Advisory Board, and Civil Preparedness Agencies, Communications. Didn't we just do something on communications, Rory?
That was kind of reconstituting the Communications Commission
Uh-huh.
to the membership be all the service chiefs and a few others.
I'm looking at this beautification commission, and it's bringing back memories of the dog in the river and how we used to have Rob and I are going to jump in the river and start cleaning it up if we had to. We used to have Broad Street Park is put in my head because we just spoke to them, but there used to be a beautification. They would go and clean along the river banks, and they were going and cleaning along the parks. Do you remember that? I think it was right before Kurt took office.
There was Seymour Pride.
That's it. Thank you, Rory. So I know they used to clean, and then I don't know what happened, if there was an issue with stepping on Public Works toes, or if it was an insurance issue.
I think Seymour Pride disbanded just because the membership just kind of didn't have the time anymore and nobody else volunteered.
Okay. All right. So do we even have a beautification commission?
We do not, to my knowledge.
Okay. All right.
Well, let's plan on doing what we said we were gonna do, and we'll review Article 2
Yeah,
for the next meeting.
admin Article 2, which is the boards, commission, and committee agencies.
Okay.
Hey, Rory, is there a hard copy of this?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask that because that's gonna kill my printer.
So I don't know. The problem with the ordinance, the charter requires the charter revision commission. It's a whole thing. You do it all at one time and then it's done. Because the charter or the ordinances are constantly changing,
Mhm.
we don't print copies very frequently because almost as soon as it's printed, it's out of date.
Okay, well, I'll print one in my office then. I'm not gonna do the whole thing, but I'll do sections because I like to sit, read, and edit.
It's a lot easier. And if you guys would like me to print off sections and mail them to you, if you don't want to, use your home printers for this, just let me know.
If you want to print out Article 2, I'll come pick it up at the town hall.
Sure.
Rory, we don't have any code books from the code publishers at your office?
We do. I'm sure, in speaking to the town clerk, she asked me, how should we update them? And if we're constantly updating the ordinances, they're constantly out of date as soon as they're printed. So
That's true. That's true.
I think
Do
if
you have an electronic copy?
I'm sorry?
You have an electronic copy like that you can edit? Like if it was in PDF or?
I believe I might be mistaken. It's been a while, but
You could do that if by going online next to them, you can either print, email, or download as a DocX document.
Yeah.
I didn't try it.
There's a little blue symbol, and once you click on the W, the word symbol, you can then check off what sections you want and download them as editable documents.
Yes, yeah. And we can email them to each other.
That's better.
Yeah, so if you just check off all of them at that point, you can do, it's pretty nice.
All right.
Yeah, that to me is a little bit more convenient.
Yeah. All right. So let's do Article 2 then.
Okay.
I am downloading it to a Word document right now. Cool.
Okay.
Very good.
All right. Awesome. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
Got our work cut out for us. Awesome. All right, well, I will see everybody next week on the 20th.
You have to make a motion to adjourn.
I do. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you.
So move.
Second.
Oh, no singing tonight. Okay,
That's not me.
I know. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Everybody have a
Good
nice
night.
night.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Be safe.